You're listening to the Icandemy Podcast, the podcast for people who can but don't know how. This is where you get actionable steps to turn vague dreams into blissful realities. And I'm your host, Omoshola Victoria Wolabi. So let's get started. Are you at the verge of quitting your online business? Wait. Before you do that, hear this. If you have been struggling to attract clients, I totally understand how that must feel. I was also at the verge of quitting as well because I just felt everything I was doing was making no sense, attracting no clients, and I was so broke and such in a state of despair. But fortunately, I cracked the code. I got the code and I'm about to hand it to you for free. So if you've been struggling to attract clients into your business and you're just at the verge of giving it all up, try this first. Head on over to learn.icandemy.org, where I share with you how to make your first $10,000 online as a brand new coach, even if you have no social media following. Yes. No huge email list and no raving testimonials yet. Head on over to see how you can create a powerful system that works to attract clients and leads for you on demand. Head on over to learn.icandemy.org to get started. Hi there and welcome back to another episode of the Icandemy Podcast, the podcast for people who can but don't know how. This is where you get actionable steps to turn vague dreams into blissful realities. And what do I mean by that? This podcast is solely dedicated to people who really know that on the inside of them there's more, but they just don't know where to start or how to, put a finger on that more, right? There's something that's constantly, tugging at you, but you don't know how to activate it. And the goal here is, over at Icandemy, what we do is we help individuals activate, optimize, and walk in their God-given purpose and assignment on earth. And how do we do that? We either do that by providing you with the training, the education, or the tools that you need to succeed. The education that you need to understand that you are not just here by mistake, that you are not just an accident, that you are divinely appointed to be here at this time for this season, right? And on today's episode, we're going to be continuing the conversation from the last two episodes. We talked about who am I? The last two episodes, we attempted to answer the question, who am I, right? And then last week, we followed it up with what I call form follows function, which is an architectural terminology coined by Louis Sullivan way back in 1896 in an essay that he wrote. And basically the whole premise of that phrase is that form will always follow function. So before we attempt to create a thing, that thing is created based on the function that it fulfills. And last week, we established that the way we have been created, the country of your birth, the color of your skin, the way you look, everything has been created for a purpose to fulfill a specific function. So everything you are, everything you have is deliberate for you to be able to complete your assignment here on earth, right? And this week, this is more of like a deeper insight, just following on from where we stopped last week, form following function. And this week, what I want to share with you on this week's episode is what I call the mystery of the bait. When I say the mystery of the baits, I'm talking about, when you go fishing. I don't know if you watch, you go fishing. I don't go fishing, but I watch a lot of animal documentaries. And sometimes I watch fishing shows, right? And the bait is usually something that goes on a hook, on a fishing hook that is dangled in the sea, right? It's let down into the water and the fish sees it and thinks that it's food. And when it gets there, when it attempts to eat up the bait, then it gets hooked, right, to the fish hook. And that is how the fisherman would catch the fish, right? So a few weeks ago, I was just in a place of prayer and meditation when I got this revelation, right? And this was just me in preparation for coming back and relaunching the podcast. This was just me in a place of prayer, talking to God, just trying to understand what exactly I was supposed to be doing in this season and who exactly I'm supposed to be talking to. And in all honesty, in true vulnerability, I was a bit in a state of despair, just feeling weighed down by life in general. And I was saying, Lord, life is just so hard. It's just one thing after another after another. Why is it so hard? What's going on? And that whole week, I was just reading Genesis 1. I don't know why. I just kept reading Genesis chapter 1, the story. You all know the story. It's like a Sunday school story, right? About how Adam was put in the garden to look after it, and then Eve, ate the fruit, the forbidden fruit. And in a place of meditation and prayer, as I kept on thinking about that scenario, trying to build a life picture in my mind of what that would have looked like, I just heard the Spirit of the Lord say to me, "You are a bait." B-A-I-T. And I said, wait, what? What are you talking about, Lord? And it says, "You are a bait. I want you to understand that you are a bait." And I just got this whole download, right? And for me, this episode solidifies your identity. It is my prayer that this particular episode solidifies your identity without a shadow of a doubt, that you understand what it is you're here to do and why you're here to fulfill that particular assignment. So in order for us to get started, I want to just premise this by saying, if we look in Genesis chapter 1, you will see that when Eve eats the apple, right, or the fruit, we don't know if it's an apple, but she eats of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we see immediately that they became aware of their nakedness, right? They became aware of their nakedness there. And obviously she was deceived by the devil, who disguised himself in the serpent. And we see when God comes down to pronounce judgment, he pronounces he first of all asks Adam, what happened here? Adam passes the blame onto Eve. Eve passes the blame onto the serpent. And then God turns to the serpent. By the time he gets to the serpent, he didn't ask the serpent any question. He went straight away and pronounced judgment on the serpent. And once he was done pronouncing judgment by saying you're going to crawl on your belly all the rest of your life, he then spoke to the spirit inside of the serpent. So when he said her seed will crush your head and you will bruise his heel, he wasn't talking to the serpent anymore at that time. He was talking to the spirit behind the serpent. So he dealt with the body. Oh, you serpent that allowed this Satan spirit to come into you to deceive Eve, here's your judgment. And once he was done with the serpent crawling on its belly, then he spoke to Satan. So Satan was the one who God was talking to when he said her seed will crush your head and you will bruise his heel. Now, going back to the day, I was just meditating on this scripture and I heard the Spirit of the Lord say, "You are a bait," And when I probed further, I'm like, God, what does it mean to be a bait? And he said, go read Ezekiel 28. So I went and I read Ezekiel chapter 28. And I urge you to go and read it. It's quite a long read, so I don't want to read all of it on the show tonight. But what I want you to go and see there is, if you read that scripture, you will see the same principle apply of when God was pronouncing judgment on the serpent and Satan. It was the same thing. In Ezekiel 28, he had instructed the prophet Ezekiel to pronounce judgment on a particular king in a country called Tyre. And this king obviously was very headed, very proud. He was starting to equate himself with God on the basis of him having wealth. So we see here that Prophet Ezekiel then pronounces judgment. And this judgment was first to the prince of Tyre. That's what God says. God said, take up a lamentation on the prince of Tyre. In this case, he's talking about the physical king of Tyre, right? The head of that territory called Tyre. And then if we go then to further down the Ezekiel 28, we see he instructs the prophet to take up another lamentation over the ruler or the king of Tyre. Now he's addressing the spirit behind the throne. Because in every throne that you see, there's always a spirit behind the throne, right? So now this is where Prophet Ezekiel is now pronouncing, raising up a lamentation against this ruler. But what baffles me the most is God speaks obviously to the body first, which is a physical king. And then it starts to say, You were the seal of perfection, of wisdom, and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Now I know that this was no longer the king that the Lord was talking to, right? He had moved away from the king, and now he was talking to the spirit behind the throne of the king, right? Because a lot of the things that we see in the physical always start from the unseen. The physical is a manifestation of the metaphysical. So today's episode is more a training style episode. So you may want to grab a pen and paper for this one, right? So continuing this, we see in Ezekiel 28 that he starts to talk about you were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. Carnelian, chrysolite, emerald, topaz, onyx, jasper, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and beryl, right? And then it says your settings and your mountains were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were in the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the days you were created till wickedness was found in you. So we'll see here that he's no longer talking to the physical king of that territory. Now he's talking to the spirit behind the king. Remember when Satan said to Jesus, when Jesus had just fasted 40 days and he took him up to a hill and showed him all the splendor of the world and said to him, look at this splendor of the world. I will give it to you if you bow down and worship me. So it tells us here that Satan actually does have access to certain territories in this world that he controls. And this particular territory of Tyre is one of those territories. So because when God was done addressing the physical king, he then started to talk to the spirit behind the king, which is Satan. So this gives us an insight, right, into how Satan was created, right? So Satan was created with a lot of precious stones. And it tells us here that he was in Eden. This Satan entity was in Eden, the garden of God. Okay. Now that we've established that, let's go back to Genesis chapter 2, where it tells us that the Lord created the spirits, male and female, and he blessed them. And then God formed the man, right? After he formed the man, it never tells us in the Bible that Adam was created inside the Garden of Eden, because it's never accounted that he was created in Eden. No. So based on my understanding, right, I started to pay attention and read between the lines. And from the clue that we have from Ezekiel chapter 28, we see that Satan was at some point in Eden, the garden of God. So Eden had always existed, right? And then it tells us in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. So Adam was brought into the Garden of Eden. So it is this is just me trying to paint a picture, create a movie in my mind based on this story, right? So the devil was in Eden. He had been cast down from heaven. He's now in Eden. God just shows up on the scene with this human being, because the Bible tells us in Genesis 2:15 that the Lord took the man and put the man in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it, right? So Adam shows up on the scene. Obviously, maybe the devil is surprised, like, what the hell is going on here? Who is this creature? And he's so mad. You know why? If we look at the story of the fall, he wanted to be like God. He wanted that God-like attribute so bad. He wanted to be like God. He wanted a parallel government to God's. And that was when he was cast down. He didn't get that. Now imagine this human being made from the dust. Now, we all know that the dust is the least of all materials that you can build with, right? You can't compare the price of sand to gold or emerald or beryl or all these precious stones that it tells us in Ezekiel 28 that this spirit entity, which is Satan, was created from, right? So he sees this man made from the least material whatsoever, which is dust, come into the garden. God brings this man into the garden, and this man has godlike abilities. Imagine that. This must have made Satan so mad, right? Now he comes in there and God says, I give you everything here. Manage it. You are the steward of this garden. Manage it and take care of it and do everything. You know, when I used to hear this story, right, growing up, we all know the story of how, Adam then or Eve disobeyed God and how God shows up and tries to fix things. Funny, the way we were taught the story, it was as if the fall of Adam and Eve caught God by surprise, right? Like, oops, they messed up. Oh, what do I do to fix it? I really don't believe that. We serve a God who is all-knowing, all-powerful. Because remember, Satan is not the opposite of God. There's nowhere in the Bible does it tell us that God ever fought Satan. Satan is a created being. There is nowhere in the Bible. So the battle is not between God and Satan. No, Satan is a created being just like you and I. Okay, so he's too small for God to fight. Satan is not omniscient. He's not omnipresent. He's not everywhere at the same time. What he has going on is just that he has a very organized labor force. Okay, family, let's face it. We've all felt pain. We've suffered the losses. You know what it's like to want something so bad, but not see a path to its accomplishment. The question, however, is, do you know how to pick yourself up and move on despite what has happened? This is what I share with you inside of my new book, Good Medicine for the Crushed Spirit, a practical guide to helping you find purpose when adversity strikes. Inside this book, you will find personal stories, relatable biblical tales, and anecdotes that prove you are never alone in your despair and will inspire you to turn pain, discomfort, disappointment, or setbacks into something positive that works for you. So if you're ready to change your life in meaningful and purposeful ways, get your copy of this book today and let the transformation begin. So now we see that God brings this man into the Garden of Eden. Now I'm sure Satan is somewhere thinking, oh damn, what just happened? Who's this dude? Like, wait, this guy is created from dust and then he has godlike abilities. What's going on here? And this dude is mad as hell, right? And then obviously God instructs Adam on what to do. Look after the garden, eat whatever the heck you want. Just don't touch this one. Don't touch this one. And Adam is like, cool, daddy, I'm good, no problem. Now, he was doing so good. As long as Adam was still under the covering of God, Satan couldn't touch him. And I always used to wonder, why did Satan not go to Adam to tempt him? Why was it Eve? And during this day I was meditating was when I really understood it. It was because when God gave Adam the instruction not to eat from the tree, Eve was not there. Eve had not been manifested in the physical yet, right? The spirit of Eve existed in the spiritual, but Eve was not on the scene. She was not yet on earth then. And then we see that when Eve finally came, when God brought Eve onto the scene, Adam only said to her, we see that when the serpent is talking to her and he asks her, did God really say you shouldn't eat from this garden? From her answer, we can see that Eve was naive. She didn't get the whole story from Adam. She said, this is what she said to him. She said, yes, God did say we can eat everything, but we must not eat from the tree that is in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it or you will die. Now, this is what God told Adam. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die. When Adam told Eve the story, Eve says, yeah, God said we shouldn't just eat from the tree that's in the middle of the garden. Don't touch it or you die. Adam omitted very crucial information. The information that was omitted there is, you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He just told Eve, girl, the Lord just says we can have everything, but just not that one. That one in the middle. He didn't tell her the specifics, that tree has the knowledge of good and evil. So when Satan shows up, Satan obviously sees this loophole, that there's a loophole. There's something Eve does not know. There's something Adam did not tell her that she does not know. Therefore, I will exploit that loophole. And that was why he never went to Adam. He went to Eve instead. And he says to Eve, did God really say you shouldn't eat out of that tree? And Eve's like, yep, God just said we shouldn't eat out of the tree in the middle. She did not have the information that the name of that tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So when Satan said to her, no, don't mind God, he just knows if you eat it, it's good for knowledge. She didn't know that. If she knew that, if Adam had given her the whole story, the whole picture, that information would not have been new to her. Because God told Adam what it was. He said, this is a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from it, right? But when he was passing on the message to Eve, he omitted that crucial part. He just said, that tree in the middle there, don't eat it or you die. So when Satan came to her, when this Satan entity rocked up to Eve, he says, this tree here, did God really say you shouldn't eat it? And she starts explaining. So when he tells her that no, it's not going to, you will gain wisdom from it and you will not certainly die, she thought that was new information. And that was why she fell. She transgressed, right? She fell and then she ate of that tree. Now, at this point, I just want us to understand that little omissions in our lives can be very tragic to our destinies. Little omissions, when we are saying something, if we don't tell the whole truth, if we omit certain aspects, right, even though we are not outrightly lying, if we omit crucial aspects of that information, it can be highly detrimental to our lives and the lives of our loved ones or those that are around us, right? So in this case, we'll see, now we've established that was why Eve fell. So in all fairness to Eve, she didn't have the full information. She didn't have the full picture of what was going on. And that little loophole, as subtle as it was enough for the devil to exploit and steal our inheritance, basically, through Eve. Now, the devil does this, and obviously they become aware that they are naked. They become aware. They do obviously have the knowledge of good and evil. And then God shows up on the scene and it says, Adam, where are you? Obviously, they're now hiding from God, like we always do when we have transgressed. We run away from God and they're hiding from God, and then God finds them. And in his mercies, he cast them out of the garden. And I used to think that was a very harsh punishment. I was like, God, really? You could have at least left them in there. But there was another tree in that garden called the tree of life, right? So that tree of life, if they ate of that tree, they would have remained in that fallen state forever. They would have lived forever. So God casting them out of that garden was an act of mercy. But now, where does this whole being the bait idea come in? So this is me in my place of meditation, just thinking about that story and pondering it and saying, God, did this really catch you by surprise? Did this really catch you by surprise that Eve transgressed? And the Lord said, no, you're not paying attention. You are a bait. Okay, I said, Lord, what does this mean? Adam was a bait. Eve was a bait. The Lord already knew that the devil was going to exploit that loophole. And the moment the devil steps on the scene and Eve eats of that apple, God already had a plan in place way before all of this happened. Because we see that Jesus said, Lord, Father, glorify me with the glory that I had with you before the foundations of the earth. So even before the earth was formed, God already knew this was going to happen. Like, God is so dope. Like, he's the best movie producer, director that I can ever be, right? So the devil obviously does not know all this. He thinks in his mind that he has done something really terrible to God. And he steals dominion, right? He steals dominion from Adam and Eve. It's because we were given dominion over the earth. We are here, like I said in the last 2 episodes, we're here to represent who God is. And he has given us some of those godlike abilities so that we can fulfill that function on earth. Now the devil comes on the scene and he steals this dominion power from Adam, because when Adam transgressed, he steals this dominion power. And I used to think all of these things caught God by surprise, but that was what the Lord was telling me. Adam and Eve were a bait. He had Satan exactly where he wanted him to be so that he can be severely punished for his rebellion. right? God knew that Satan was going to do this, right? And truly, Satan deceived Eve, thinking he was doing God a disservice, right? Yes, some things were damaged along the line by that scenario happening, but God says, I got this. I already had the fix even before the trouble happened, right? So Adam and Eve, when they transgressed, God had Satan exactly where he wanted him to be. He had him exactly where he wanted him to be so that he could be punished for his transgression, and not just punished by God himself. We have the power to put Satan in his place, right? By the grace of God. Who gave us that power? Jesus did. When Jesus came, he gave us authority because Jesus went down to hell to collect the keys, right? And he gave us every authority. That is why when we speak in the name of Jesus, we are carrying power and authority over the forces of darkness, the devil and his agents. Now, how does this whole thing that I've talked about concern you and your identity? I'm glad you asked. Now, when we come into this world, we are here to fulfill a specific function. We are a bait. So wherever there's darkness, right, and we walk into that place, and sometimes we may not look qualified, we may not look justified, we may not look like we belong. That's all good. But one thing I want you to know is that you are a bait. So when you walk in there, the darkness thinks it has you. But in other words, you have the darkness, because when you're done in that situation and in that environment, the light must shine. But the darkness will not see you coming, because when you walk in there, you don't look like much. It doesn't look like you belong here. It doesn't look like you're qualified in that room when you sit there. But you sit there knowing you are a bait and you are here to fulfill a specific function, which is catch that entity, whatever evil is lurking around there, and turn it around for good in the name of Jesus. Now, most of us do not know that we're a bait. So when we get into these situations, right, we panic, we start to dance with the prey, right? With the fish in this regard, we start to dance with the prey. We roll around with it. We don't understand that we are just here for it to think that we are food so that we can catch it. We can bring it over to the light. Instead, most times we because of this lack of awareness, the fish eats us and drags us into the darkness, right? So when you understand that you are here to represent, to have dominion, to subdue, you are a bait, right? Your situation is a bait. You not having the resources you have is a bait, because people will think, oh, she won't amount to anything. She doesn't have much. Like people said of me growing up when my father passed away, right? I had family members who said, oh, the breadwinner of their family is dead. They will never amount to anything. That's the end for them. What they did not realize was that whole situation of my dad dying and us going into real poverty for a while was a bait. It was a setup for my comeback. And that's what I want you to know today. If the devil had known that God already had the plan for Jesus to come and fix this whole mess, he wouldn't have messed with Eve in the first place. He would have just left Eve alone, right? He would have just left Eve alone, because at that point, he was still having it good. But right now, when Jesus came, things have gone from bad to worse for that entity called Satan. And I want you to start to carry yourself with a certain level of confidence today to say, whatever situation I'm going through, I am a bait in the situation. Whatever hardship I'm going through, I am just a bait. I'm a bait to make hardship go away. I'm a bait because when you go into that situation as a bait, you are there to hook the circumstances and capture it in submission to God. Bring it in obedience to the power of Jesus Christ, and then you rise up out of it. So I just want you to know in this episode that you are a mystery, and you are the mystery of the bait. It doesn't matter what is going on right now. You are not the prey. You are the bait. Okay? Your situation, your circumstance, everything you are going through in life, in business, you are the bait. And when you are the bait, know that there is a fisherman. There's a master who has control of the bait and the hook. And he can pull out the bait at any time. When you're looking at those fishing videos or documentaries, you will see that when the fishermen dangle the bait for a while and the fish is not hooking onto it, they bring it out, right? They bring it out. They have the power to bring it out of that situation, right? And then try again, maybe hook it properly and send it back. So we are here on an assignment. We are here on a mission. We are here to handle some things. And we should not ever forget that, lest we become the prey. You are not the prey, you are the bait. And you are here to bring light into this darkened world. You are here to rise up and fulfill a purpose, just as God intended from the foundations of the earth. And I don't want you to ever forget that. Whatever difficulty you're going through, it's all a setup for your comeback. And I just want to leave you with this word, that no matter what it is you're going through, you will rise out of it. And on that note, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. This episode is sponsored by our very own MOGUL Mindset Training. Are you ready to embrace new experiences, see opportunities where you thought there was none, and totally surprise yourself? Because you can, by unleashing the power of your mind. MOGUL Mindset System is a 5-step system that helps you retrain your mind to work with you and not against you, so you can awaken your inner giant, 10x your impact, your income, and become truly unstoppable. The truth is, you, my friend, have a superpower, your creative genius. And I'm here to make that power multiply manyfold so you can get past fear, self-doubt, and finally start working and thriving in your life and business. Ready to unleash your superpowers? I thought you would. Head over to mogul.icandemy.org. That's mogul.icandemy.org to learn more. So there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. And for more content like this, follow us on our social media handles. On Facebook, it's at Icandemy, the Facebook page. On Instagram, it's at Icandemy. Or come say hello over on my personal page. On Instagram, it's at Omoshola Speaks. On Facebook, it's Victoria Wolabi. Feel free to reach out, introduce yourself, say hello. I love meeting you. And if you have any stories that you feel will inspire another woman to action, I want to hear from you. I really do. I love hearing from you. Send me an email to hello@icandemy.org. So it's hello@icandemy.org.